MIAA Monday, back again this week with MIAA Commissioner Mike Racy. Sir, thanks as always for coming on, and we're winding down the fall season, the fall sports season, football entering the last week of the regular season.
Yeah, it's that busy time, Chris, where we have the crossover and the fall sports coming to a close, and the winter sports starting to ramp up, so it's an exciting time to be in the conference office, gearing up for fall sport postseason, and a lot of crossover type games within the region for winter sports, basketball in particular. So a lot going on, but a fun time in the MIAA for sure.
Start with football here, just kind of looking as we get into the final week of the regular season. How have you evaluated this year? I mean, we've only had one postponement, I guess, if that's still the right term that we use for that one at this point, just with I can't remember what week that was back when Northwest and Lincoln.
Week 2 or week 3, Lincoln and Northwest couldn't play. Lincoln had a health issue, and contact tracing really knocked them out from being able to play that game. And we considered it a postponed game because we figured that if we had an issue that Lincoln and Northwest had games that couldn't be played, but they were both available, we'd match them up. And I guess technically until we get to this weekend, we still have that in our back pocket. But if that game doesn't get played, it'll just go as a no contest, no win, no loss. We're not treating those as forfeited events, especially because of the breakthroughs we see with students that are vaccinated and still with COVID or transmitting COVID. So we established pretty early on that we would have a policy if that game doesn't get played to consider it a no contest. So technically still postponed and to be determined, but certainly when Northwest and Lincoln take the field Saturday against other opponents, then that game will not be made up and will be considered a no contest.
And by that point, I guess by this point next week or so, we'll start looking at the postseason a little bit more of what that's going to shape out to be. And I asked Northwest coach Rich Wright about this last week about the regional rankings and how they're set up, and we've talked about it. The early ones, one MIAA team in right now, and that's Northwest. They kind of control their own destiny. But as we enter this last week, just how big is this for the conference to kind of get those teams in? I mean, Northwest, they win out. I mean, they're going to be in automatically there, but getting another team in there, and what's kind of the biggest thing the MIAA has to look at right here?
Well, it's a very important week, and, the NCAA will make their selections for the NCAA postseason playoff in football. 4 regions, 7 teams in each region, and we'll know more today when we see a regional poll that comes out that will reposition teams following this past weekend's games. There was a little bit of an upset in the Great American Conference that will shake things up. But without being critical of the selection committee next week or the regional advisory committees that do the weekly rankings or any other conference, Chris, that might get multiple teams into the playoffs. I'll go on record right now, if the MIAA only gets one team selected, that's one of the biggest travesties in the history of Division II athletics. The MIAA is historically one of the best, if not the best, Division II football conference. We have schools that fully fund the sport, have some of the best facilities in the country, some of the best coaches in the country, recruit top student athletes, some that go on to actually have opportunities to play professional football. we are a football conference. Our membership invests a lot in football. And there are other conferences, frankly, in Division II that have an advantage of putting multiple teams in to the playoffs because of the region they're located in. And that's not fair. And so I think, we'll see how it plays out. I'm still hopeful that the MIAA finds a way to get 2 teams, maybe even 3 teams into the playoffs. We'll have a team or 2 that gets selected to play in bowl games. As you and I have talked about, our record in bowl games the last 4 years, I think, is 14-0.
Yeah.
Where we've matched up with other conferences. So, and I consider this year, Chris, to be another year that just highlights the depth and strength of the MIAA. There are no easy weeks. There are no off weeks. From top to bottom, the MIAA is as strong as any conference in the country. We've seen teams that can't compete in the MIAA that leave our conference and go win a conference just down the road and make the playoffs. And that's not fair. And that's not what intercollegiate sports should be about. You should want to play the best week in and week out. That's what our MIAA schools do. And, I think, frankly, I think MIAA football's never been stronger when you look at the strength of and caliber of the offensive players, the skill players in our league, the defenses that are on the field, and schools like a great example, Missouri Southern, that has vastly improved their program and been competitive all season. Northeastern State's better, Lincoln's better. So everyone's improving. It's a tough conference. But we'll know next Sunday where things stack up, and a lot of this is out of our control. We send our teams out to play and to compete, and at the end of the day, we cross our fingers that the system's going to work, that the process is going to play out where the best teams have a chance to compete for a national title, and but we certainly deserve multiple teams from the MIAA in every Division II football playoff just because of the strength of our conference.
A poll that really doesn't have any significance with the regional rankings, but the AFCA Top 25 poll, 3 teams right now in the top 25, Northwest sitting at number 4. I believe Kearney, let me get back to 22, and Washburn coming in at 24. And I think when people look at that poll and then we see the regional rankings poll, they're like, why aren't these working together? But those are 2 separate entities on their own. It's almost like Division I where you have the AP poll that comes out, but then you have the playoff come out and everything looks different. Is that kind of what we have here, I guess, for terms that maybe people can understand too, of the AFCA poll is one thing, but the regional rankings is the one that matters in the end?
Yeah, and at the end of the day, Division II fans have learned that they really need to dismiss these national polls. They really don't mean anything. There's not, unlike Division I, there aren't a lot of these national games where you've got teams from, one region of the country playing a team in another region of the country. Division II is really designed just the opposite. It's really intended to be a measurement of who's the best in each region. And that's why these regional rankings that are done by coaches and administrators, and then ultimately the selections that occur in all of our sports and football by the Division II Football Committee, again, made up of administrators and coaches that are really just supposed to look at the strength of a team within its particular region. So the national polls are nice and fun and good to talk about. And, I think, probably do take into account the history and strength of of conferences compared with other conferences, but really don't come into play, Chris, as it relates to national championship playoff teams.
One more question as we look at football and the end of the season too, and the playoffs. For people who don't maybe understand how the regions come together and figure out who the top 7 teams are, and without being critical of the regional groups or anything like that, what is that process, and who are the ones kind of, without naming probably names either, just kind of who are the ones that kind of have to make these decisions when it comes to who gets in and who's left out?
Okay, so in most sports, Chris, the MIAA is partnered in the central region with the the Northern Sun Conference, schools primarily in the Dakotas and Minnesota, and then the Great American Conference, schools in Oklahoma and Arkansas. And for example, in basketball or volleyball or soccer, those are our regional opponents. And there are 8 regions like that, made up of 3 conferences, except in one region there are only 2 conferences. Football is a little different. So not all of the Division II conferences play football. So they have to do a little different mapping. And all of those decisions regarding the geography for regions, the conferences that make up the different regions, those are decisions made by the NCAA Division II Championships Committee. And in football, they use a format called super regions. So instead of having 8, they only have 4. And in football, our grouping is with again, the Great American Conference. But then we're also grouped with the Great Lakes Valley Conference, schools primarily in eastern Missouri and in Indiana, Illinois, and then also with the GLIAC, which is schools that are in Michigan, Wisconsin area. So that's our geographic region in football. And you could argue whether the MIAA should be in with the Northern Sun instead of the GLIAC, or the Lone Star Conference instead of the Great Lakes Valley Conference. So there are certainly ways to draw the map, different ways to draw the map. But Division II has been using that super region alignment the last few years in football, and so really, the MIAA is competing for 7 playoff spots with schools from the GLIAC, the GLVC, and the Great American Conference.
Should be an exciting week 11 of the football regular season for the MIAA. And like you said, we find out pretty quickly afterward who's going to make the postseason and who will go to bowl games. So it should be an interesting week or so that we're going to have in the next week for MIAA football. MIAA soccer, we got the quarterfinal matchups over the weekend, and now we're down to the Final Four in the MIAA soccer tournament. Up here in our area, Northwest Missouri State, they're still rolling after a pretty impressive win over Washburn over the weekend. Yep. I think it ended up being 5-0, and Northwest and Coach Gordon named MIAA Coach of the Year. Just some really good high-level soccer being played right now in the conference tournament.
Yeah, and I think the bracket went chalk, if I remember right, in women's soccer. The four schools that hosted quarterfinal games all won. Central Missouri had a little bit of a surprise, a tough game. I think they were leading 2-0 at half, and it ended up getting tied at 2-2, and they had to win in overtime. So that was a little bit of a surprise, but UCM is the 1 seed, and winning in the quarterfinal, they will host our semifinal and our championship rounds. And if I remember right, UCO and UCM will match up, and then Northwest and Emporia State will be the other side of the bracket. And it should be great soccer, Chris. We've had UCM and Emporia State have both been ranked in the top 10 nationally during the year, and I think Emporia State is high as number 3. And you mentioned Northwest. UCO is a perennial power in women's soccer. UCM having won a NCAA Division II national championship just a couple of years ago, so should be great. I think that the dates are Friday, Sunday, November 12th, 14th for the semifinals and the finals, and it'll be over in Warrensburg at UCM Soccer Complex. Plenty of tickets still available, and if you can't make it, folks, as always, can tune in and watch the semifinals and the championship on the MIAA network.
This is more of a, I guess, hyper local tie for us up here with Northwest Missouri State. I saw a tweet last week, and it may have been from Colin McDonough in Northwest, that the football has been ranked, volleyball's ranked, soccer's up there too, and just having that many sports all being successful at once, it's hard to have one or two, but to have those 3 sports as well as, cross country out there performing, just what does that say about maybe some of these schools that are getting multiple sports at the same time to be nationally recognized and doing what they're doing? And I know Northwest's not the only one. Missouri Western's done it before too, but right now Northwest is one of those that I think everybody's kind of looking at saying, okay, there's multiple sports in this one fall sports season that are trying to make a name for themselves.
Yeah, I think the folks at Northwest think that their men's basketball team might be okay again this year too. So it's
a little bit.
Yeah, I think a lot of this, Chris, is the result of institutions in the conference that, invest money back into the programs with state-of-the-art facilities. I know at Northwest, the Hughes Center is certainly a place for track and field student athletes, your indoor track and field, but to have a complex like that at Northwest Missouri State now, where student athletes have a place that they could train year round, no matter the temperature, no matter what it's doing outside, that's a game changer. And I think the opportunity historically for Northwest to be very competitive in football, and certainly in the last several years, what they've done in basketball, but other programs begin to benefit from that culture and seeing those programs win and being around student athletes and seeing what it takes to be successful, and then the institution to invest back and provide even a more enhanced and excellent student athlete experience by a brand new wonderful facility. And we see that throughout the MIAA. The facilities that exist at Pittsburgh State and Central Oklahoma and Missouri Western and Washburn, and I'm going to leave some out. But you've been there, you've seen them, Chris.
Yeah.
And those are the things that allow a conference to not just have one school that dominates everything, or to have a conference that's pretty good in one sport but everything else struggles. It's why the MIAA is exceptional in so many sports at so many of our institutions, and that recipe that that Northwest Missouri State's tapped into is something that a number of schools throughout the MIAA have recognized, and I think it's why you see what Northwest is doing this year, in football, in volleyball, and women's soccer, and they'll keep it rolling into basketball. So it's fun to watch, and it's fun to be part of a conference where schools make that kind of a commitment to their student athletes by giving them state-of-the-art facilities to compete in.
So I was looking for the original tweet, and I found it was in regards to soccer team up there being ranked at number 6 in the region rankings last week. Probably won't be much change this week either, with them winning in the first round of the postseason tournament. But they've never had all three in the same year qualify for the postseason. Right now, it looks like that's a real possibility for Northwest. So I wanted to find that to make sure I had everything correct. But that'd be, I had to go research that, how often you have a school get football, volleyball, and soccer. There's still a lot of time for things to kind of shake out there. But I don't know how often that happens. Maybe it's more than I'm thinking of.
It was just a few years ago. I think the first or second year I was the commissioner, Northwest was the first Division II school to win a national championship in football and men's basketball in the same year. So, it's and I guess I don't want to gloss over something I mentioned earlier, that a lot of this is culture, and a lot of the success that our programs have in Division II is directly related to the type of coaches that we have in our conference, and coaches that are happy impacting and changing lives at the Division II level. They're not looking at the MIAA as that quick stop on their way to someplace they think is better. They understand that the MIAA is really the pinnacle opportunity in college athletics, where you're able to have such a direct and powerful impact on a young person in helping them set a course for lifelong success. You can have that same experience, I think, in other divisions, but I think it's built into the DNA of what a coach's life is like in Division II, and what type of interactions and mentoring and role modeling they play for Division II student athletes. Our coaches in the MIAA understand that. That's why they stay and build programs, and Northwest is seeing the benefit of that with women's soccer, volleyball, and other sports for sure.
I'm getting way off the trail here, but that happens when I just start thinking of things and start talking about things. But Coach Trotter, before she went up to St. Thomas, she spent 20 years at Missouri Western. I think I recall her saying something about, I didn't think I'd be here this long. I mean, she wasn't a Missouri Western, graduate or anything like that. She's from up in Minnesota.
Yeah, she went home.
Yep. And so when she talked about the fact of, I didn't think I'd be here this long, but it became home, Division II, why do you think there is so much wanting to stay? Because, I mean, people kind of look at, maybe the smaller colleges and universities, and we'll get to that in a little bit too, but the Basketball Hall of Fame Classic, but they look at those as stepping stones, so to speak, to Division I, to FCS, FBS, whatever it is. But when they get to the MIAA, it feels like unless they're going home, like we've seen some coaches here locally with Coach Wicks, he goes back to Wyoming, and you have Coach Trotter going back home too. You have a lot of coaches staying maybe longer than they even thought too, because of, like you talked about, what's in this conference as well.
Well, I think a lot of times, Chris, what drives coaches to be coaches is that they're great teachers, and it's it's really a way for them to continue to be part of and give back to a game that's benefited them so much. And I think our coaches in Division II, when they get to campus, they realize that they're in environments that allow them to be teachers and leaders and to connect with people and to have those relationships. A lot of times in Division I, the expectations for coach are really more manager. You're managing a program. You're managing a group of coaches. You're managing alumni. You're managing boosters. You're managing campus expectations. And a lot of the time that I think coaches hunger for in teaching the game and teaching people about life, I think it's harder to find in Division I than it is in Division II. And I think that's what Coach was talking about. I think she got to Missouri Western and realized that, hey, this is exactly where I want to be doing what I want to do as a teacher of softball. And, certainly I know she struggled with the decision to leave, but it was a chance to go home and that opportunity for her to be back there. And that's a hard thing to say no to. But I think, Chris, it's that environment that exists in Division II that allow our coaches to be teachers is powerful and what keeps a lot of people in Division II.
See, I kind of went off the rails there a little bit where I thought where the conversation was going to go, but this kind of got us back into where we're going to wrap up here with the Small College Basketball Hall of Fame Classic and talking about the impact of small colleges and what they've been able to do. I was covering football this weekend, Missouri Western and the Chiefs on Sunday, but Mitchell Ribberall was there for us for the Hall of Fame Classic. But I was there on Friday for the Hall of Fame presser for the inductees going in for the class of 2020 because they didn't get a chance last year to do it.
Right.
I didn't realize the names and who was going in until I actually sat there and listened to them talk. And I think that's what a lot of people maybe miss with small college basketball. The one that really stuck with me was Kenny Davis, 1972 USA team captain over there.
The Olympian, yeah.
Yeah, over there, and he was there with everything, the turmoil, and they didn't take the silver medal because of the controversial finish with the Soviet Unions. But how big is it for Small College Basketball Hall of Fame Classic, stuff like that, to highlight, not just, MIAA, but everything else too, to kind of put a spotlight on what there is, not just at Division I level?
Well, my good friend John McCarthy, who's the executive director of the Small College Basketball Hall of Fame and puts on the Classic in St. Joe each year and brings some of the best men's basketball teams to St. Joe to help tip off the college basketball season each year. He is, he's the perfect person to run that organization. And he created it, he built it and somebody, John McCarthy, he's been a student athlete. He's been a coach. He's been an AD. He's worked at the NAIA. He's been around small college basketball his whole life. And similar to what we were talking about earlier, coaches giving back. This is John's way of giving back to a sport that's meant so much to him. And, he is, he's really the identity of small college basketball right now at all levels, NAIA, Division III, Division II, and the things that he's created around small college basketball, so important for the game of college basketball. John Wooden is somebody that got his start in the NAIA. The great story about Coach Wooden bringing his Indiana State basketball team in the late 1940s to Kansas City for the NAIA tournament, and an African-American player on his team, and that student athlete being unable to stay in the same hotel with the rest of the team, and Coach Wooden, refusing to play and saying, no, this is not for us, and really those actions helping to change, break the color barrier to usher in a new generation of college basketball that was inclusive, and those are the stories of small college basketball. The people that helped change the game, that helped change college basketball. James Naismith, getting his start at Springfield College in Massachusetts. So the foundation and the fabric of college basketball rests with small college basketball. That's the history. That's where the stories are. And John, through the Hall of Fame, through the new foundation that he's created, certainly through the Classic, and helping student athletes today understand those stories by getting to go to the Hall of Fame inductions. He's carrying those legacies forward, and he's helping to preserve those stories for generations to come. So it's great that it's here. It's great that the MIAA can be close to that. And yeah, I was up there and saw some good basketball on Saturday. So it's fun to be around. But yeah, small college basketball is an important part of who we are in this country, who we are as society, and really help pave the way for the growth of the game, Chris.
MIAA Commissioner Mike Racy, thank you as always for coming on. Pleasure to talk to you, and looking forward to this week. A lot of postseason implication on the line. MIAA soccer tournament, volleyball is getting close, and football. This is when we find out what's kind of going to happen here for the postseason. But pleasure as always to talk to you.
Yeah, great couple of weeks here leading up to Thanksgiving. A lot going on. The start of postseason, and it's great to be in the MIAA. It's a great time of year to celebrate the accomplishments of our student athletes. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you as always, sir.